Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is apply. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear apply used is to mean to be applicable or relevant. So, with this particular definition, we might be discussing which rules are applicable or which rules apply to a particular group. A second way you might hear apply used is to mean to put into operation or use. So sometimes you'll hear apply on the job, right? As we're describing certain tools that may be putting into operation or use for a particular task. A third way you might hear apply used is to mean to work hard or give full attention to something. So with this definition, I think it's pretty common to see reflexive uh, pronouns. So, an example, maybe you're giving someone advice, you're telling them it would be good if you apply yourself, if you work hard at this particular task. You should know that apply is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this, you're just going to add ing to form applying. The past tense and participle forms are going to require a spelling change before we add ed, right? So since this verb ends with the letter y, we're going to drop that y, add an I, and then add ed. Our base verb, apply, I, ends in a vowel sound, and vowel sounds are always voice sounds. So our past tense ending is going to make a D sound, and we're not adding an extra syllable here. So the past tense and participle form should sound like applied, applied. Now, I do have a few phrasal verbs for us to look at with the verb apply. The first is apply for. We generally use this when someone is pursuing something through a formal process. So for this, we can think about jobs, colleges, scholarships, right? Many choices here. You can see that in my example. He's going to apply for financial aid. Okay? So the next phrasal verb we'll look at is apply to. This can have a number of different meanings. We're going to focus on 4 of them today. The first way to use apply to is for a particular reason or a specific reason. So with this usage, we're going to separate apply, and then we're going to have that object before we use our preposition to. An example sentence: I'll apply this gift card to the balance, right? So here we have a gift card. We're using it for a specific reason to lower the amount that we owe or that we need to pay for some item. A second way you might hear apply to used is to mean to take action for a certain outcome. And again, we're going to separate our verb apply and the preposition to. Here's an example: apply pressure to stop the bleeding. Okay, so here we're taking action, we're maybe pressing on something, and the outcome here is to stop bleeding. A third way we can use apply to is to mean to place something on another surface. Sometimes this is going to imply also rubbing something in. An example here: you should apply this cream to the wound, right? So imagine someone has a cut, right? So we are going to place the cream onto the surface, the area where the cut is. A fourth way we can use apply to is to submit an application for something. So with this last usage, we're not separating apply and to. Okay, here's an example: she applied to several colleges. So again, this idea, submitting an application. The last phrasal verb that we're going to look at today is apply within. Sometimes you might see this on signs, or you might hear someone give you this piece of advice or give you this command. So if someone tells you to apply within, or you see a sign that says apply within, they're telling you to come in, enter that particular place in order to submit an application. An example, if you're interested in working there, you can apply within. Right? So someone here is indicating you have the ability, you can go there to submit that application. Now let's continue using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today we're going to practice the present perfect and the simple present. Let's start with the present perfect. We use this verb tense to talk about an action that started in the past and continues into the present. And we also use it to talk about something that occurred at an unknown point in the past tense. To make an affirmative present perfect sentence, I need two parts. I need a present form of have. So if my subject is I, you, we, or they, I'll use have. But if my subject is he, she, or it, I'm going to use has. And then I'm going to use the participle form of my verb. Now here, apply is regular, so our participle is the same as the past tense. Here's an example sentence. The nonprofit has applied for a grant from the United Way. Right? So this is indicating going through a formal process to request money in this case. That would be the usage here with grant. And we might be using the present perfect here because we don't know when that application was completed or was submitted. If I want to make a negative present perfect sentence, I need to insert not after have or has. And then again, I'll use that participle form of the verb. Sometimes you might hear a contraction form like haven't or hasn't. Here's another example. He hasn't applied himself this quarter. This might be a sentence you hear from a teacher talking to a parent about a particular child. So here, the teacher's suggesting he hasn't worked hard. He's not giving enough effort to lessons or his studies. Finally, you can make a yes or no question in the present perfect by starting with have or has, whichever form matches your subject. The subject comes next, and then you're going to use the participle form of the verb. Here's another example. Have you applied for the open position? So again, this idea of have you submitted an application for this particular job? Now let's take a look at the simple present. We're going to use this verb tense to talk about habits and routines. We're also going to use it to discuss facts. And I think of a fact applying to my first example, but I should remind you that we really need to pay attention to the subject in the simple present. So if our subjects are I, you, we, or they, we're just going to use the base verb in the affirmative. But if our subject is he, she, or it, then again, we're going to have another spelling change. We're going to drop our Y and add I-E-S. You can see that in my example here. This rule applies to all employees. This is tying back to that first definition of our verb apply. And because it's just one rule, this is like an it, that's why you see that third person singular form of the verb. Now let's look at making negative sentences in the simple present. Again, we need to pay attention to what our subject is. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, we're going to use do not and then the base verb. Or you might hear don't, the contraction, and then the base verb. But if our subjects are he, she, or it, we're going to use does not and then the base verb. Or we can use the contraction doesn't and the base verb. Here's another example sentence. Many students don't apply for the scholarship. Right? So again, this might be a fact. Someone is encouraging someone else to apply. There's not a lot of competition. Your chances are good if you apply because there aren't too many others doing it. Finally, you can make a yes or no question in the simple present by following the structure. Start with do or does, whichever form matches your subject, and the subject comes next, and then you're going to use the base verb. Here's another example. Does the mask mandate apply to everyone regardless of vaccination status? So again, this third example goes back to our first definition of the verb. So to be applicable to someone or something. This is a question I've heard a little bit more of lately. So again, as variants increase and we continue to have very high case counts here in the United States, more and more businesses and organizations are now saying, we don't care if you're vaccinated, everybody needs to wear a mask, right? And this rule is now applying to everyone. Now, let's spend just a moment looking at a couple related words to our verb apply. And the first word we're going to use is the noun application. I've used this word already, I think, a couple times as we've talked through some of the ways to use this verb. The first way the noun application gets used is to mean a formal request to some authority for something. So with this first definition, I think of job applications, college applications, scholarship applications, grant applications, right? A number of options here, but they're all essentially formal requests. An example here, did you complete the job application? Okay. Another way to ask this question, we could use the verb, did you apply for the job? Right? Both of those would have the same meaning. A second way you can use the noun application is to refer to the practical use or the relevance of something. Let's take a look at an example sentence. This information has no application to our work. Right? So somebody shares something. Okay, well, maybe it's something good to know, but we can't use it in this particular project or with this assignment. It has no practical use or it just isn't relevant to the work we're doing. A third way you'll hear the noun application used is to refer to either a program or some type of software. So this definition really connects to computers and technology, and this program or this software has some particular purpose that users want or need. So an example of this. The company is developing several applications that could replace keyboards. Okay? So they're developing programs or software that would make typing unnecessary or not needed. Now, connected to this last definition is a second noun. It's just the shortened form of application. It's app. And if you're a smartphone user, you probably hear this, or you might actually even see this in the phone. Okay, so when app gets shortened, again, it means application, and generally we're referring to something that's been downloaded to some sort of mobile device. So a cell phone or smartphone, a tablet, something like that. So an example here, I installed a new weather app on my phone, right? So many cell phones come with app stores, right, where you can look for these different applications. It could be for information, like getting weather predictions. It could be for games. It could be for email, social networking, etc. Just really an unlimited amount now of applications for our smartphones. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.